Great. That I took it on a USB as well, because otherwise we would have a problem. Dermot, first of all, to thank you for inviting me again. I'm happy to be back. It's always very interesting to be at the procurement week. The topic of this panel, and I've taken this very literally, is procurement crisis, failures by suppliers, and in-house purchases. But for the purpose of my presentation, I thought it was better to reverse the order. So we just changed it, right? So I'm going to consider first failures by purchasers and then by suppliers. I was asked to speak on the topic of normal low bids and the effects of failure, but I find it very difficult to only look at the effects and not at the causes or any preventive measures or any solutions. So I've added those considerations as well. I decided to consider the effect of two types of failures by purchasers. And the effect of these failures only in relation to abnormal low bids. With regard to some of the effects of contracting authorities' failures in the award of contracts, they'll only materialize in the performance of the contract. Right. This is not to put everything on contracting authorities. Obviously, it's a choice of the bidder to submit a very low price. And they could be attaining certain bidding strategies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about pricing strategies as well. I've decided as a conscious choice not to discuss the actual concept of an abnormal low tender. I've done some work on that previously. The only thing I hope to offer today is some inspiration for discussions on low prices. So the first thing I wanted to address is the things procurement officials do which incite tenderers to submit low bids. Pricing behavior incited by specific tender terms, they're not as such pricing strategies foreseen by economic theory. This pricing behavior is merely predictable on the basis of general assumptions of business behavior, that is maximization of profits. I worked with an economist on a data set containing 300 judgments and verdicts from Denmark and Sweden on abnormally low tenders. And he says it very bluntly. He says most of the time the cause of tenders that appear to be abnormally low is just crappy tender documents. You can't really blame tenderers for using the opportunities granted to them by the contracting authorities. So, I've decided to speak on only two different examples here, but there are many others. First of all, it happens very commonly for procurement with a high number of items, such as framework agreements tendered by central purchasing bodies, that a basket valuation model is used. So the centralized purchasing body does not want to look at all the price items because there may be thousands and thousands. So they choose the basket and then they assess all tenders on the basis of the basket. That obviously incites economic operators to price the items in the basket low and all other items higher. So what to do in these situations where the effect is that if you buy something which was not in the basket of evaluation, you'll have a higher price. What should we do? The obvious choice would be not to tell what's in the basket. So not let the tenderers know at the time when they submit the tenders which items are going to be evaluated. But I'm not sure that's going to hold up to EU law. So there might be another solution, which would be to use a different evaluation model for your call-ups. So you have one basket for your award of the contract or the framework, and then you have a basket determined on the basis of the specific needs of the contracting authority at a given point in time, which could be any products. So in that sense, you make all prices relevant for the tenderer. Just one solution, there may be others. I know this solution is being tested in practice. But to continue on framework with multiple suppliers, oftentimes there's no obligation to supply because the idea is not that the best tenderer should supply all the contracts on framework when you have multiple suppliers. It should be allowed to refuse a call-off for example, due to lack of capacity at a specific point in time. There are many problems with this lack of obligation to supply, but for this purpose, I'll just highlight the incentives to price low on the items that the tenderer does not wish to supply. So they can just pass on that contract. I've seen a few examples where the low pricing is coordinated between bidders in the same group, meaning that the bidders that have priced certain items low will just pass on that contract to other bidders or other economic operators on the framework, which they're in the same group with. It's almost needless to say that the effect of this lack of an obligation to supply may be that the price for the contract authority ends up to be higher than they might have expected. The best solution to this incitement to price low is probably to impose an obligation to supply, and then find another mechanism to award the contracts between the different economic operators on the framework. This, however, offers less flexibility, and it makes the framework less attractive for the serious supplier. But I've seen this obligation imposed in practice, so apparently it works sometimes. Right. I am still considering failures committed by the contracting authority, but now at the award stage. So what happens when the contracting authority receives bids that are displaying suspiciously low prices on certain items or low total price? Well, as something new, there's an obligation to verify whether the low price is in fact abnormally low or whether there are good explanations for the low price bids. Potentially the new obligation in the EU rules to reject tenders that are abnormally low because they're based on non-compliance with social, environmental or labour law obligations could have the same effect as a basket evaluation model, because it might be that the tenderers price items not related to these kinds of obligations lower than the actual cost. It shall be interesting to see what the Court of Justice will make of such a pricing behaviour. So, without going further into this new obligation to reject under some circumstances, in situations where the contracting authority has a choice on whether to reject or not, there may be some reluctance to reject. This could be due to fear of paying too much, which could be difficult to justify both for political and budgetary reasons. Second, a reluctance to reject could be due to the fear of a complaint from the rejected tenderer. But as a counter-argument, you could say that now there's a right to complain for unsuccessful tender as well, because there's an obligation to reject under some circumstances. So that's not really a ground for reluctance, I think. The second topic I want to address is strategic pricing. Due to incomplete contracts, asymmetric information, incomplete monitoring, and because the conduct of a public procurement procedure represents a transaction-specific investment for the contracting authority, bidders have incentives to apply different pricing strategies. Examples of pricing strategies which are used in public procurement are quality shading, unbalanced bidding, or renegotiation, which is also known in economic theory as a hold-up. Some of these pricing strategies are difficult to spot, and others cannot be prevented. For example, a strategy which is founded on asymmetric information between the bidder and the contracting authority. Say, in case the bidder's experience, private information show that there's something missing in the tender documents. This will open up for later renegotiation at a later performance stage. So these pricing strategies will result in submission of low bids, and neglecting them will lead to inefficient procurement results. Therefore, at the award stage, it's necessary to consider how to react, for example, to a future demand for renegotiation, or how to monitor the quality provided. So, if you have this fear of rejecting, what could increase the chance of making the right rejections? I'm not a practitioner, but I have been told that it's extremely difficult to assess low-priced tenders. A helpful distinction is made both by the General Court and by Danish and Swedish review bodies. And the distinction is between general and specific explanations. So general explanations for low price could be we have economies of scale, or we have a spare capacity, and that should not be sufficient to justify the low price bid. Whereas explanations concerning specific circumstances of the economic operator, business-specific documentation supporting this, in those situations, you could be fairly certain that you're dealing with a serious tenderer. So to sum up, there are plenty of opportunities for pricing strategies in public procurement context. Some of them may be prevented by the way the terms are written up. Some of the opportunities for strategic pricing are difficult to eliminate because they occur due to the economic reality of incomplete contracts and so on. The effect of the pricing strategies, which could lead to low price tenders, is that they do not reflect a low cost of production. And unambiguously, they lead to inefficient spending of taxpayers' money due to payment of too high a price or too low a quality. So, it's not all about the contract authorities or now to the suppliers, and the failures committed by suppliers who submitted very low price bids and were awarded the contracts anyway. The first failure is in the quality of the supplier's performance, or in other words, the situation where the contract authority does not even get what it paid the very low price for. This kind of strategy is called quality shading, and it's possible to apply because contracts are incomplete and because monitoring is not always possible. In such circumstances, the supplier have an incentive to bid low to get the contract and then reduce the quality to make more money. Clearly, the pictures on the slide, they're not a very good example of quality shading, but I think you sort of get the idea. Imagine that the pictures symbolize a consultancy report or something similar, where you cannot describe the quality ex ante and where you do not know the quality ex post. So I chose this bin metaphor because I thought it was a good opportunity to use the picture of the knitted coating on the bin. It was one of many outcomes of a knitting happening in my hometown, where most street furniture of the whole city were covered in knitted coatings like this, and it was sort of displayed over a whole weekend. But I think maybe I'm straying a little bit, but I just really thought it was a good event. It was fun to go in front of the town hall a Sunday morning, and suddenly everything was bright in knitted coatings. Right, okay, getting back to substance. So what to do when quality of performance is not up to expectations? We've already touched upon this, the previous speakers, but I think that after the usual warning and dialogue, the most effective response is to terminate the contract. I'm saying this as the contract termination is now clinging to the economic operator, at least for a period of time, and at least during those near future tenders where the voluntary exclusion ground related to terminated contracts is being applied. This could perhaps imply that termination would be used more frequently, despite the transaction-specific investment of the tender. And then I thought, well, at least once, because once you've terminated the contract, then you've gained a reputation that you will, if you have to, terminate the contract. So at least once, which might affect that the next contractors will keep up the quality of the work, or at least think twice about applying a quality shading strategy. Termination is a strong signal to other contracting authorities as well. And it prevents that the same supplier wins the contract if there's a need to re-tender, or if the contract comes up to tender again within the period of exclusion. Termination of a contract was recently used by a Danish contracting authority. The region had contracted with a supplier of translation services. However, it turned out that the translators did not show up when they were booked. So, a very practical problem. The region blamed the very low price of the accepted bid, and they terminated the contract. But it should be recorded in this situation that the region had previous bad experience with that contractor. A couple of years back, they had settled a case on systematic wrong billing from the same supplier. So perhaps the new rules on exclusion made termination more attractive, or perhaps this was a signal to show that they were willing to terminate when suppliers are consistently providing low quality, or perhaps enough was enough. So, the last part of the presentation, I want to give an initial warning before I start this part. I am no expert on bankruptcy and procurement. You might get the idea that I was, because I am from Denmark, and therefore I must be obsessed with the recent MT Højgaard and Sublime case, which was handed down by the Court of Justice last year. And that was a very interesting case, but I've decided to speak on something more general. In the situation where the failure on behalf of the supplier that submitted a very low bid takes the shape of bankruptcy, the effect is clearly the risk that the contract is not going to be performed. I'm not going into the question of how any pre-qualification may be conducted to prevent this situation, because I guess if the price is very low and maybe it's accumulation of several contracts that goes wrong, then the supplier's economic and financial status may well have passed any pre-qualification criteria some time ago. The interesting thing is how contracting authorities could act in response to the prospect of a supplier's bankruptcy. I've thought of a couple of different possible ways, but further solutions may be out there, and I'd be interested to hear them if you've got any suggestions. First, I actually thought of the state aid rules. So they require the contract authority to act like a potential creditor in a situation where the supplier is in near bankruptcy. And I was thinking that it might be an option to increase the price to facilitate completion of the contract, like it's provided for in the de minimis price revision rule in Article 72 of the new directive, and that this price increase may even be in compliance with the state aid rules if it could be considered as a rational response of a market creditor in the situation to be sure to get the contract completed. Second, I thought once again of the new Article 72. It has two relevant provisions, and I'm going to consider each of them. The first, which is now on the slide, stipulates that if there is a revision clause in the original contract, which is clear and precise, and which provides for the replacement of the contractor in the case of bankruptcy, there's no obligation to have a new public procurement procedure. I guess that this revision clause has to reveal how the other or the new contractor is chosen. Maybe the second best bidder could be an option here. And clearly, the low price of the original contract is an issue which may be dealt with in the revision clause where there's no limit on the value, or by the de minimis price revision rule, which allows for a 10 or 15% price increase without the need to re-tender a contract, as long as the revision is below the threshold of the public procurement directives. Even though the revision clause allows for only maybe a small amount of a price increase if it has to be below the thresholds, I need to warn about the state aid rules. Because in state aid law, public procurement is supposed to lead to the market price. And if suddenly we increase that price, then it's not the market price anymore. And if it's not the market price, then it's state aid. So I thought about how the situation may be outside the scope of state aid rules, and I thought that if the price of the accepted bid is clearly below the market price, then it must be possible to come around the state aid rules by saying now we are increasing the price to a realistic market price. But I think the burden of proof is on the contract authority in that case, and it might be quite heavy. Yeah, I'm almost finished. The second relevant provision stipulates that if a new economic operator fulfills the pre-qualification criteria and takes over the contract, there's no need to tender, provided that the change of supplier does not contain other substantial modifications of the contract. And the question is here, which other modifications may be allowed? They must not be substantial, but it's a bit uncertain whether, for example, the de minimis price revision rule can be applied accumulatively. Third, I thought of the bankruptcy might be causing urgency, but Anne-Marie already covered this topic. The important part here is the old price is not a problem because it's a new contract awarded under the rules of the Public Procurement Directive. But again, I have to flag the risk of granting state aid. And fourth, I thought of the recent Danish case where the contracting authority decided to in-house ambulance services in a response to the German provider's bankruptcy. This was probably to avoid going back to the previous legal monopoly provider of ambulance services. So to sum up, accepting low price bids call for the awareness of contracting authorities, but if it all goes pear-shaped and ends in actual nearby bankruptcy, the directive provides for solutions which actually fit situations where bids are low. I'll end the presentation by admitting that perhaps I've come across as hostile towards contracting authorities, which was partially the intention, but it's not close to the whole truth. I think that it was the intention to add new facets to the discussion of low prices, and I think that the responsibilities of contracting authorities, as well as the effect of low prices, have been overlooked a bit in the debate. My presentation has not displayed the whole truth. It's only 20 minutes, but of course low prices are desirable. It's what we're looking for. It's what we're aiming at. Not all tenders that appear to be abnormally low are going to end up in low quality or higher prices or bankruptcy. In my opinion, the decisive question is whether the low price is a result of strategic pricing or of lower cost of production. Thank you very much for your attention.